At St. Aldwyn's boarding school for girls, the bell at the end of first period usually signaled a quick shuffle of books and a rush to the next class. But this morning, the bell rang with a pause, and then the crackle of the loudspeaker. All students in upper and lower third forms report to the infirmary immediately for health inspection. This is a compulsory attendance. The word compulsory echoed in the corridor. At St. Aldwyn's, compulsory meant there was no choice, no argument. Emma joined the slow-moving line in the main hallway, blazer buttoned, scarf still wrapped against the morning chill. Some girls whispered theories. Maybe it was a flu jab, maybe a hearing test. Others said nothing, just kept their gaze fixed ahead. It wasn't until the door to the infirmary swung open and the faint smell of antiseptic drifted out that Emma realized. It was the nurse, Nurse Harrow, tall, upright, and with a reputation as rigid as the starched collars she wore. Nurse Harrow was known for two things: precision and rules. The infirmary was bright and spotless, its white tile walls reflecting the cold morning light. A single high-backed chair sat in the center of the room. Behind a desk stood Nurse Harrow. Tall, rigid, her gray hair pulled into a severe bun. Her white uniform was perfectly pressed, her shoes polished enough to catch the light. In her gloved hands she held a fine-tooth comb, moving it through a girl's hair with quick, practiced precision. She didn't smile when she looked up. She simply said, "Next." The first few inspections lasted less than a minute. Part, check, move on. Some girls returned to the hallway relieved, hair untouched, but a few were led through a smaller side door. When they reappeared, their hair was noticeably shorter. One girl from Emma's dormitory returned with a tidy bob where her long braid had been. She avoided everyone's eyes as she walked quickly back to class. "Sit." Emma lowered herself into the inspection chair, heart quickening. The nurse's gloved fingers were brisk and unyielding, parting her hair with the comb, scanning each section with clinical precision. Halfway through, the comb stopped. Nurse Harrow's voice was calm, but her words carried weight. "You've got lice, a significant infestation." Emma's hands gripped the arms of the chair. I can use the special shampoo. I'll comb it every day." The nurse interrupted, eyes sharp. "School rules are clear. In severe infestations, long hair must be removed immediately. Today, no exceptions." Emma's stomach dropped. She'd spent years growing her hair past her shoulders, longer than the school regulation required. "But my hair," the nurse cut her off, voice sharp. "This isn't about your hair. It's about hygiene and preventing spread. You'll go through the side room now." Emma hesitated. She didn't wait for a response. A firm hand on Emma's shoulder guided her toward the heavy wooden door. The smaller room was colder, with light that seemed harsher than the infirmary outside. A high-backed chair sat alone in the middle, a white cape draped neatly over it. On the counter, scissors, clippers, combs neatly lined in military order. Nurse Harrow gestured sharply. "Sit." The cape was fastened tightly around Emma's neck. She could feel the knot pressing against her collarbone. Her eyes prickled. "Please," Emma tried again, her voice shaking. "Can't I just try the comb first?" "Nurse Harrow, no. That's for mild cases. Yours is advanced. Chin down." A single tear slid down Emma's cheek before the scissors even touched her hair. The cold steel pressed against her nape. A thick section of hair fell heavily into her lap. "Hold still. Don't make this harder than it needs to be," Nurse Harrow said. Another snip. And another. Long, shining strands slid down the cape and pooled in her lap like silk ribbons. Another section slid down the cape, the deep brown strands curling in on themselves before falling to the floor. Against the dark fabric of the cape, they looked almost black, except where the light from the high window caught them. Emma had always worn her hair long. For as long as she could remember, it had reached well past her shoulders, sometimes brushing her waist. It had never been cut short, not once. She would braid it herself in the mornings, sometimes 2 braids, sometimes one down her back. On special days, she twisted it into neat buns. She was used to feeling its weight, the way it moved when she turned her head, the way it caught in the breeze outside. Now the same hair she had lived with every single day was coming away in heavy, silent handfuls. Emma kept her eyes fixed on the far wall. Moving her head even slightly made the scissors press against her skin. She could feel the tug before each cut, the pull at the roots, the sudden release when the hair came away. The faint scent of her shampoo still clung to it, a clean, faintly floral smell she had chosen herself. The room was quiet except for the steady snipping, the occasional scrape of the chair legs when the nurse shifted position, and the faint voices from the hallway outside. A long section landed across her arm. It stayed there until the next snip, when the vibration made it slide down into her lap. She didn't brush it away. "Tilt your head forward." Emma obeyed. Another lock slid forward over her shoulder, a rich brown against the pale skin of her arm. The pile in her lap grew quickly. The more that came off, the cooler the back of her neck felt. She swallowed, keeping her breathing even, but her eyes were hot and wet. The scissors kept working. The nurse's hands were quick, controlled, each cut clean and final. When the last long section dropped, Nurse Harrow set the scissors down on the counter. The metal made a dull sound against the surface. Without looking at Emma, she reached for the clippers. The sound filled the room. Emma's hands tightened under the cape. Head forward, she lowered her chin. The first pass started high on the crown and moved straight down. The vibration was strange and heavy against her scalp. It left short, blunt stubble behind. Hair slid down the cape in light, uneven clumps. Some fell into her lap, some drifted to the floor. The deep brown strands looked almost black as they scattered over the tiles. The nurse didn't slow down, guiding Emma's head into position with one hand, while the other moved the clippers in steady, overlapping lines. Loose hair clung to Emma's cheeks and the back of her neck. She could feel it sticking there, but she didn't lift a hand to wipe it away. The last section came away from the top of her head, falling forward into her lap. The humming stopped. Nurse Harrow set the clippers down and picked up a stiff brush. She swept the stray hairs from Emma's shoulders, down the front of the cape and onto the floor. The strokes were firm and quick. Nurse Harrow, there. Clean, quick, and no more lice. Off you go. She untied the cape and shook it out over the bin, sending the rest of the cut hair tumbling in. Emma stood slowly. Her head felt light, the air cool against the short bristles left behind. She reached up and touched the side of her head. The hair was barely more than a centimeter long. On the floor around the chair, the dark brown hair lay in a rough circle. She stepped around it and walked toward the door without looking back. Outside, the autumn air bit at her bare neck. She pulled her coat collar up, but it did little against the chill. A small gray car pulled up, its brakes crunching on gravel. Her mother stepped out, wrapping her scarf tighter. Her eyes went straight to Emma's head. The smile faded. For a moment she didn't speak, just stared. Her gaze moved over the short, even stubble, the exposed shape of her daughter's head where long, dark hair had always been. Emma had never been without it. Her mother used to braid it for her before school when she was younger, tying the ends with bright ribbons. Even in the busiest mornings, she would smooth it down before sending her out the door. It had always been part of her. What happened? Emma swallowed. The nurse said it was school rules, LICE. Her mother's expression shifted, still serious but softer now. She stepped closer, her voice low and warm. "Oh, love. They took a lot off, didn't they?" Emma nodded, her throat too tight to answer. Her mother stepped forward and pulled her into a warm hug, one arm tight around her shoulders, the other hand resting protectively at the back of her neck. "It's only hair," she murmured against Emma's temple. "I know it feels strange now, but it's still you. You're still my Emma." The words loosened something inside her. Emma let out a long breath, and for the first time that day, relaxed. As the car pulled away from St. Aldwyn's, Emma caught her reflection in the window. The short crop looked strange, her dark brown hair gone, replaced with neat, even stubble. But her mother's hand resting on hers made it feel less like a loss and more like something she could live with.